How's everybody doing today? Pete here at Spawn Fly Fish, and we do have another fun little bug to tie with you guys. And we're going to tie a small version of the Heisenberg Streamer from Nick Blanco. So let's get started. One thing, we are going to use a trailer hook system, not a two hook system, because where we fish here in Southwest Washington, pretty much no place that you can use two hooks. We're always using single hook. So that's what we're going to tie today. So in the vise, I've got the Ahrex SA280, and this is a size 8. So clearly this is going to be for trout, specifically for cutthroats, coastal cutthroat, all that good stuff. So wherever you live, when you're looking for that little micro streamer that has a lot of impact and a lot of power and gets noticed and all that good stuff, gets eaten, this is a great fly. And so many different ways to tie it as far as color options, little stuff that makes it yours here and there. This is a great platform to play on. So let's get our thread down here. We just got some 6/0 white, and we're going to start off with a little bit of a marabou tail. Nothing crazy. We're just going to peel a bunch of fibers off of this feather here, and keep in mind the full finished size of your fly when you're putting this tail together, right? So we're going to have that little hook in the back there, and then we're going to add a shank to the front, but we're going to have it connected with wire and 2 little beads. So that's going to be the length of our finished fly approximately. And so when you go to tie in that tail, keep that in mind. If you did just a single hook length on this one, it's not going to be a big enough tail. So we're going to go roughly double that hook, and that should get us somewhere in the zone. So just go tie this on and tie it on back. Don't let those little fibers get in the way there in the front. We're just going to cut them out anyway. So all the way back down to where we put those little markings with our thread earlier, and then come in and trim out those butts. Not too shabby. All right, first thing we want to do at this point is start adding some flash. There's a lot going on in this fly, and don't rush through it because you'll miss something. So we've got some pearl crystal flash, just got a few strands here. I'll tie it in on my side first with a loose wrap, position, make sure everything's in the right spot, and then just tie that all the way back down. Come back up. I'm going to take one wrap in front of that flash and then pull the flash to your side and do the same thing. Come on down. I'm just going to turn that vise, make sure I'm staying on the side and not slipping down to the underside of the hook shank or any of that craziness. Go ahead and cut that flash, and we're just going to try to bring it all up at one time. If it doesn't work, oh well. But there we go. There's our flash. Not too bad, right? All right, so for our next element, this is different from like a full big size version of this fly, right? We've got a tiny hook in the back with micro shank in front. So if we were to use regular Schlappen, it might be a little bit bulky in there. It might cover up that underbody a little bit too much. So today, instead, what I'm doing is I've got the mini Gamechanger Schlappen from Hareline. And so this is going to give me the right length of fibers coming off of there, and this should do the trick. So I've got just one feather. I'm not going to, I don't want to bulk this up a lot. I want to keep that profile fairly small. All right, get that feather tied in. And now for that body I was talking about, and again, this is where the beauty of this fly is, or just one aspect of the beauty of this fly, I guess. You can easily change the entire outcome of this with simply alternating your body material. And so for this one, I've just got some chenille and tinsel chenille pearl. Just gonna get that tied in. Estes would work. Anything small like that would be great. And that's it. Let's go ahead and wrap this guy all the way up here until we reach about a full hook eye length. Like, so right here is getting pretty full. I don't want to crowd any more of that eye because we do want to add some legs in there. So I'm just going to go ahead and call that good and tie that chenille off. One more wrap, make sure everything's strong, and trim out our chenille. Keep it handy though, because we will use that again. So don't go put it away, just leave it out. All right, so now let's get into our little Schlappen feather here. Bring those fibers back as we start to wrap. And we do want just a little bit of space in between the wraps, not touching wraps. These are spaced. So we're going to palmer this feather forward and call that good right there. But let's separate the fibers from the quill. Get a little happy spot right there and let that thread fall right in between. Just a clean tie off and trim out. Like so. And then for these legs, just coming in with some micro Grizzly Flutter legs, or excuse me, micro Grizzly legs in clear. So nothing crazy. I do have trouble just using one leg on anything. I don't know what it is. I like movement, especially for these sea run cutthroat. So let's get rid of that single leg and do this right, at least for the fish I'm chasing, right? It has nothing to do with the original pattern. It's just I'm making it work for the fish I'm trying to catch. So got two of these legs here. I'm just going to veil them around my thread, bring that up, and get it tied on. So now at this point, I'll just separate them out, and sure I will. I just need two on my side and two on your side. So let's get those slightly pulled. Be careful, be gentle, take your time. You can break rubber legs. You don't want to do that. That's no fun. Get those tied in, pull them all back. Just make sure these are on the side as best as you can. That one's giving me some trouble there. There we go. Like so. At this point, I'm going to go ahead and trim all of those as well. And I just want those to come back to the end of that marabou tail. Nothing fancy, nothing extreme. Just kind of line it all up. There we go. Two legs and two legs. So let's go ahead and whip finish this guy, and we're ready to move on to the front portion. So told you it's not too bad. There's a lot going on, but it's all manageable. It's nothing you haven't done before. Just might look slightly different. All right. So for the sake of time, I don't want to sit and have to wait for head cement to dry. So let's pretend. Here we go. Ready? Coat the thread. Great. Let's go ahead and pop this guy out of the vise. And so I'm using my whip finish tool just to catch that. And there's the back side of our fly. All right, so now for the front, let's get started with this spawn micro jig shank 60 degree, like so. For the bead, I've got the spawn slotted football bead, and this is a size 6mm in hot pink. Now it's going to clash a little bit with the beads that we use, but that's okay. And do you know why it's going to clash? It's simply because I had red beads in the size I wanted for the 3D, and I had a pink bead for that front. And so as much as I like most of my stuff to really match up and all that, the point of this is to grab attention. And believe me, the red bead's in the center and the pink bead in the front. Oh, this thing's going to grab some attention. Don't forget, it's also got all this built-in movement. Let me try not to move the vise too much on you guys there. There we go. So all that movement, all these little hotspot trigger colors, it's going to be amazing to watch the fish come smack this. All right, some .020 lead-free wire wraps here. And again, I do like to fill in the front portion of that arm, simply so when I tie everything down, I'm starting with an even underbody in the front section of that shank. So keep that in mind, and then just make sure that bead is squared up right, and then we can start our thread. And again, I'm going to work that thread under the arm and then trim this tag end out like so. And again, if you were just connecting the hook right here, then this would be the time to do so, but we're going to use some braid and do it a different way. Again, since the Heisenberg uses 3D beads in the middle as a hot spot attractor, we're going to do the same thing even in this mini version, and so we don't need to slip that hook on right away, but we do need to get it on somehow. We're going to attach today using some spider wire. Any braid would be okay. You could use sinuous wire. Any of that stuff is great. Just make it work for you. And so for the way I like to fish in my style, spider wire works great. Plus, I bought it years ago, and turns out one spool, well, it's going to last more than my lifetime. So if I've got it, may as well use it. No need to buy a second material if you've got one that works. Unless you just like material like I do. All right, so now let's talk about these beads. 3D bead from Hareline, but this is that smaller version, right? Key for tying these little micro streamer patterns. So I've got 2 of them. I'm just going to slip them over the closed end of this spider wire. There are my 2 beads. Just let them slip all the way down there. Great. So now let's get back to this tail section that we did. And remember, this is sitting hook point up. And so that's the way we're going to slide the closed end of that loop through the hook point, bring it down, and then all we have to do is simply go through both those beads one more time with the closed end. Keep it on top, don't let it twist. So now, pull that little tag, right, all the way through, snug all this goodness up, and then what we want to do is make sure we're leaving enough room for this to swing and move in the back. So we don't want to come all the way down to where those beads are butted up and then there's no movement, right? Give it some movement, leave the little bit of room right there, and let's get this tied in with a couple loose wraps, and we can really give a good check here. So you see where the bead wants to slip right behind the closed end of the back of the shank. That's perfect. Tie it down. And one thing we do need to do is cut open our spider wire little loop that we made. I'll keep my end to my side, your end to your side, only so that you can watch this turn. So I'm getting the thread in front now. At this point, I'm going to fold back both pieces of that cut spider wire. And what I want is for that to rest on the sides of the 2 stacks that are on top of that shank. And again, all in the name of an even underbody. Keep that in mind. So you can already see, like, there's a lot going on, but there's nothing really condensed. And that's going to allow so much movement and freedom of this fly to just do what it does, which is catch fish. So there we go. Everything is attached. So now typically when you do the Heisenberg, you tie in a full marabou feather and start wrapping and then tie that out back. For a fly this size though, I think it grabs a little bit too much of marabou. And so let's go ahead and do a controlled version of that, which is simply peel off fibers and tie them in on the top. Do the same thing on the bottom. So it's not quite as much fun, it's not as glamorous, but it's going to get the job done. All right, so I just want this to come back where some of these fibers, and you can see how uneven that is. That's not going to work for us. So let's go ahead and pinch that, and right against that pinch, clean rip, and now we've got evened up ends, and then transfer that so that it comes to just barely kissing the hook point there is kind of the idea. Very soft wrap, right? Because we want to make sure that we're getting kind of full coverage on the sides and top of the shank, and then some loose wraps all the way back. Keeping in mind, just check your work. Make sure you're spreading that marabou out as much as possible. Let's trim out these butts, and then flip it over and do the same thing on the bottom. So again, not a ton of fiber, but enough for coverage. What does that mean? Well, beauty is in the eye of the beholder. So full, partially full, man, it's all up for subjectivity. All right, so ripped off those uneven ends. We're just going to come on the bottom of this, line it up with what we did on top, and again a loose wrap, mashing sort of with my off tying hand as we work our way around this, and that's going to be really nice. All the way back, and there we go. So I can trim these fibers out now, and we are essentially getting everything ready to do a wash, rinse, repeat, right? So now we've got all of our fibers of Marabou in there. Let's go ahead and come back for some more flash. So let me grab 3 more pieces of pearl crystal flash. And again, this is one of those moments where you could easily change the entire outcome of this fly with just even changing the color of the flash. But you know, so I'm thinking ahead at this point for sea runs. Most of those sea run trout are not in the system right now. They're out in the bay, they're in the salt water. They are avoiding all the chum and coho that are in our system, and I don't blame them. All right, so at this point, just a little bit shy of where our first set of everything ends. Trim that, giving it that little bit of a layered effect as we go. All right, so at this point we need another Schlappen feather, and here's yet another one of those mini Gamechanger Schlappen feathers, and get that tied in so that the convex or good side is facing away from the shank and the concave or underside is facing the shank. That just gives the prettiest outcome to the fish that we can. And after all, it's kind of what we're doing, right? Giving the best offering we can to these fish that are willing to come and play with us. Just an easy way to say, hey, thank you. All right, so now let's get this chenille, pearl tinsel chenille wrapped up here. And again, Estes would work, any small chenille would work. Be creative, don't be confined by one little video that you watch. We do appreciate you watching, but keep in mind, this is just a guideline. You can tie this a bunch of different ways. All right, a little crowded there in the front, but I think we'll be okay. Let's get our Schlappen feather, get those fibers worked back before we start wrapping. And again, looking for some evenly spaced wraps, not touching, nothing crazy, but we do need to leave some room up front. Luckily, all these fibers condense really well if we do have to kind of creep back on them. And so I won't tell if you don't tell, but there's a little secret right there. All right, tie these off. And get that thread in front just so we can trim this out and keep going. All right, there we are. Get those fibers are trapped to release. Good. Let's see what we got here. Let's come back just a touch. And at this point, coming in with 2 more of the micro grizzly legs. And this time I'm going to go ahead and just tie my side in. Keep them on my side, right there. And then I will come on to your side. And the idea as far as length here is to reach halfway back on your previous legs. Anything like that will work just fine. And so let's see where these line up to. Roughly halfway back, and we can just kind of trim all of them at one time if we're really feeling froggy. So there's about halfway point with my thumb right there, and call it good. Yahtzee. All right, so one last thing to do here, and I guess there's 2 if you wanted to add eyes. Today, not adding eyes, and the original pattern does call for dumbbells, but again, this is for local waters where we fish. Dumbbell eyes don't last very long, and so going with a solid bead that will last. There we go. Nice little loop in there. Now, this is This is the fun part. We've got some ice dub here in UV Pearl. Now, the tendency for this stuff is to be a little long. So go ahead, get a bunch of your fibers out and stacked, and then you should be able to go, man, that's, I need to trim some of those or whatever. You want to do that before spinning up that loop. You don't want to try trimming all that out after. It's just a mess. It's gnarly. It's no fun. So keep that in mind. These are going to work just fine. Go ahead and close that loop and try to keep all these goodies out of my loop here as we start spinning that, and be patient. All right. Easy to say, not always easy to do, but when it comes to timed flies, especially more difficult flies, more technical flies, the difference really comes to patience. It's timing, it's thread control. I mean, the ultimate way to get better at this little hobby of ours is thread control. Don't care how many years you've done it, don't care how many flies you've tied, you can always improve that thread control, and that is what advances you as a fly tyer. And of course, watching all of our videos helps. There we go. And a couple extra twists there. Make sure everything's nice and trapped in that loop. And then simply wrap. And we're going to start creating or filling in, if you will, a water pushing head. And that's pretty important, especially when a micro fly like this, right? You don't always get the chance to move a lot of water on a smaller bug or smaller pattern. This is your chance. So by all means, really pack this head in and make sure those legs aren't getting pulled over. There we go. They're still on the side. Great. What a mess we've got going on, but it's a fun mess. All right, let's finish this guy off right about here. I'm gonna pull off some of that ice dub. Just create a little easier time for me to tie down. Really pull down, really make sure that's seating that loop in there, and then we can pull it back and get a couple thread wraps in the front there. And just carefully trim out the rest of that little loop that we made, and come in one more time with that brush and bring it to life. Free any of those trapped fibers out of there. And again, don't need a huge head here because it's not a huge fly. So just a little bit like so, and that's gonna work really well. All right, there we have it. Let's whip finish this guy. And oh, there we go. There's one whip finish. Let's do one more just for good measure, and we are ready to hit the water. All right, so there you go. There is a small version of the Heisenberg micro jig shank in front with a little size 8 trailer hook in the back from Ahrex. And I mean, tons of movement from the wiggle in the legs. You got the flash, you've got the red beads in the center that are going to show up and glow. You got this hot spot in the front. I don't know if you can get any better than that, folks. I sure hope you enjoyed this. If you did, by all means, please hit like, please hit subscribe, and we will see you all on the water.